Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hardcore Metal Detecting Radio. I'm Derek Asklar, and Craig Talley's on the line here. We'll be hosting the show, and it's actually Coffee with Derek and Craig. I'm already messing up, Craig. One of those mornings, I even hit the wrong startup music. But, we do a little bit of startup music on these shows, and these have been from Alex Stoner, and it's the last one was called Jump. We usually do We Move On in the morning, and it's kind of promoting him a little bit there. He does a lot of different music for videos and stuff like that, or that you can use for videos, and he seems to do a good job. And there's a lot of other people that do. There's a lot of platforms for that. I just happened to hit the wrong button on the soundboard because I hadn't had enough coffee yet, so I'm still working on it. I see we got Bill Marsh is tuning in this morning. He's over there in Ohio, and Ohio Relic Hunter has a Facebook page and everything else, so he's getting that caffeine in him, I guess, this morning. But we wanted to talk a little bit today about the settings to use. And Craig, and if it's like a conglomeration of metal detectors that we have to talk about or explain, and some metal detectors don't have these adjustments, others do. But when you buy a metal detector, if you're new to the hobby, depending on which one you buy, a lot of them do have what we call presets. Pretty much you can just move it into a position like park hunting, or maybe they have a field or sand or beach settings. They're all preset into your metal detectors. And you can use these to get started with. And Craig and I have always said that they're great to get a handle or get an ear for what your metal detector is doing, the sounds it makes, and how it reacts to certain situations. But it's always a good idea to get the most out of the equipment that you bought, is to get out of what we call presets and start coming up with your own settings. And for a lot of people, this sounds real complicated, but it isn't. This is where talking to your friends on whatever format you're on, social media-wise, forums, Facebook pages, this and that may own the same metal detector that you do, they may have already come up with settings that work in their area, and it gives you a starting point. Maybe people can explain to you, and we try to do that on this show, is educate people on what the settings do, how they work. And it gives you a starting point to kind of adjust your metal detector for the kind of environment that you're in, because every metal detector won't work in every situation. I guess you could say you're dealing with ground mineralization, soil moisture, and this is kind of deep topic for a half an hour show, and we're just going to touch on a lot of little points. But it does play an effect. You'll hear us talk about real dry ground, and how your metal detector performs, or how ours does. And when it gets real wet outside, it's rain for a day or so, the ground's real soppy wet or whatever, and how it seems like your metal detector is even more powerful. Well, it conducts. I always, Craig and I believe, it just conducts that signal, that power through that moist ground. And this is a blessing and a curse at the same time, because if you're using a detector that is extremely powerful, as far as gain and sensitivity, you may find it at running your normal settings that you would normally run on just regular ground. You may need to back these things way down when you're dealing with wet ground, because it almost overpowers the detector. Remember, you want to keep your detector as stable as possible in the way it performs, and you may have to turn these settings down a little bit to get really good depth and everything, but make it the sound better, and the way that it hits targets better, because you can almost have it too powerful. It's almost like a stereo system in your car. If you crank that gain all the way up, or if the ground's really wet and you're running a gain at a certain setting that you would use on dry ground, it can almost distort like a stereo system does in your car. Starts getting really messed up, and it can make you miss or make good targets sound bad. In the way that they give the signal to you, the sound. Go ahead, Craig.
If you use too much sensitivity, it's almost like it's kind of similar to being in mineralized ground, real bad ground. Mm-hmm. Machine starts faulting and stuff, and the worst thing you can do is overcook the sensitivity and everything to where your machine's not stable. And if you're especially if you're in an area where it's been hit pretty hard, and you're looking for those, deep targets, that, static and falsing is going to, hurt you, because, it might be a good signal and you'll think it's falsing, or it'll just be a lot of noise and you just won't pick out that signal. I found it EMI is particularly challenging too.
Yeah, electromagnetic interference. We get it from Wi-Fi, we get it from Bluetooth, we get it from, like if you're near a house, all the routers, and, we pick it up from a lot, even your cell phones. It's not so bad anymore. It used to be really bad on cell phones coming through while you're metal detecting and you have it in your pocket. And, man, all of a sudden you'll get this rogue static or clicking noise or whatever else. EMI is another big problem that you need, that can be addressed, that metal detectors are handling better and better nowadays through frequency offsets and stuff like that. Like I said, some of this may sound foreign to some of you, but there's several videos on it. Craig, like the Equinox does, pretty good in that kind of environment. But, you've had situations where the dais, at your old house, you were just going, you couldn't even go on the one side of your house because it was just so bad, or you had to turn down the dais so far.
Well, the weird thing about the dais is, you get interference, but as soon as you get a signal, it breaks through the interference. And,
right.
So I wasn't able to get super depth, but, I found weed pen only an inch or two deep with the dais and the Bliss tool that all the other machines over the years missed because of the EMI.
Yeah.
The Bliss I was able to use. The one thing I was able to use was the going to the OR mode, and that just about knocked out all the EMI. I was hunting right underneath the power lines, that run across the side of my. Well, it actually runs the front and the side, but I was able to get bullets at 12, 13 inches, right along the street there.
Yep.
That was an area where when I, some of the first detectors I'd used, 30 some years ago there, I didn't even think there was anything there. It's just.
Yeah, it's just so much electronic. And Craig lived in a cookie cutter, not a cookie cutter, but that kind of environment, old school neighborhood. A lot of power lines, and everybody's running Wi-Fi, and you got all this, they're coming out with more and more electronics. They got cameras and everything else out there, and
I had the Masonic Temple there, which is 365 feet high or something, and up on top, a lot of people don't know this, but all the security people and have all these antennas and stuff up there,
right?
And because it's the highest point in Tidewater, Virginia, plus 365 feet even higher than that. So it's a perfect place to have antennas. And, if you look up on there, you can see them all over the place. I had this telephoto thing I could put on my iPhone 6, and I could, zoom in and see all this stuff up there. They actually had people working on it up there, on scaffoldings, and
right.
When we were kids, they have an observation deck up there, and it goes all the way around the top, and they actually have elevators that are slanted at an 18-degree angle. I think they were the only ones that were slanted in the world like that. And but when we were kids, we were always sneaking into the Masonic Temple, and hardly anybody was ever in there. Just a couple ex-police officers that were guards, and the superintendent was really nice, and he knew we wanted to go up on the observation deck, so he started taking us up like once a week. A couple times he just dropped us off, said, "I'll be back in half an hour."
Right.
And
that's cool.
And we'd take we had these balsa wood airplanes we hit on us, and we had these GI Joes with parachutes on them.
Oh God!
One time we threw a Super Ball off the top, and we had everybody, all the friends were down on the parking lot, and we thought this thing was going to bounce as high as Masonic Temple, and when it hit the ground, it turned to dust. It just blew up
Oh, I didn't even know they could
we
do
were,
that.
yeah, I mean, we were so mad. We were like, God, that's unbelievable. How come that thing, but you could think that that thing was coming down pretty hard,
I'm
from
glad it didn't hit
300 feet
somebody,
up.
smack them in the head, and knock them out.
Yeah. We used to
Excuse
do
me.
all kinds of funny stuff like that,
Yeah.
And
With all this
That was
stuff too, Craig, it just, with all that antennas up there and everything, it really it can mess with your metal detectors. Like electric fences are another thing, and some detectors it doesn't bother. I mean, you have these what they call frequency offsets, and I don't know what they call them on every metal detector or these newer ones, but a lot of times you'll hear them say if you both own a dais and you're hunting, two people are hunting with a dais, and you get that interference because they're using kind of the same frequencies and stuff like that. You have an adjustment on your metal detector that you can adjust so that you guys don't hear each other's targets. And that was a big problem with White's Spectre V3s when they first came out, and you had the wireless headphones, which were really nice. I mean, they were very nice for the times and the technology. But if a friend of mine and I was hunting, we always had to stay 30 feet apart or something like that. And, metal detector, if not, I was hearing his signals and he was hearing mine. And then they had what they called a frequency offset to offset it so that you guys don't hear, you don't hear each other. And this is the same thing. You can use this sometimes on these little bit older metal detectors to tune out EMI. This is just electromagnetic interference. And a lot of times it'll come through. You can adjust these little by little, and you can kind of tune out whatever this interference is that's messing with you. Now, this probably won't work on a lot of metal detectors have problems with electric fences. It's a lot of power going in, especially if you get near the transformer of these electric fences, because they throw out so much EMI anyways. With the bliss tool, I was able to hunt right underneath them, adjusting my frequency and running an OR mode and stuff. But if I got within 50 feet of that box where the power is coming from, it would just totally, you just couldn't metal detect. It was just so bad. You hit situations like that and in places you can't hunt. But I've talked to, and we've always said this, if you're in a spot where you have EMI and you can't use your detector and you have to switch to a different kind, a different brand or whatever, maybe it works better. And I hear some people say, well, I'm only getting down like 2 or 3 inches with this because I've had to adjust it so far. But that's 2 or 3 inches that you're getting down on the ground that you couldn't do before. So at least you're able to hunt a certain amount of that ground because of the situation you're in with the EMI. It's better to be able to hunt than not to hunt. That's the way Craig and I've always looked at it. Take what you can get because, well, you got to walk and find another site that way. And that's why, as you buy metal detectors, you hear us, a lot of us own a lot. I mean, Bill Marsh does and everything else, Craig does. We own several only because of the situations we get into. It may not be feasible for me to use a bliss tool in somebody's front yard, but I can grab my Quest Pro and go in there and be able to identify targets a little bit better so I don't tear up so much ground or dig so deep where I'm messing up their yard. Craig does the same thing. Sometimes he'll use a bliss tool or the Deus or the Equinox. And we're fortunate enough to have a couple different kinds of metal detectors, and a lot of times Craig and I will buy these things used, and that's a good point to see if you're going to even like a detector. Because I've bought really high-end detectors before, and I didn't like a feature they had. Like it was like that with the E-Track, MindLab E-Track. Great detector. A lot of people use them, still use them, and they're good detectors. I couldn't get my ear wrapped around the way that the tones were. It's a way that the machine just naturally puts out the tones. It was different. I didn't like it, and that was my only crib with the E-Track for me. Not beating up the detector because it's a damn good detector.
It's pretty much all like that with all the Mind Labs. They got that sound, and
right.
I like the sound.
It's a preference thing.
When I got the what was it, Explorer XS, I ended up testing it against the Nautilus. I ended up using the Mind Lab because it was performing a lot better. But I'd be hunting near people, and they could hear sometimes my sounds coming through, and they go, that sounds like a synthesizer.
Right.
and it kind of did, but I got so where if I went over a silver coin, I knew it was silver, but because it was a nuance within that high tone, it had nuances to it, and I could go. I remember I'd get these bumps that were like real low tones. I mean, right around nickel, and some of them were below nickel, and I would pick up the pewter buttons and stuff,
right?
That read really low. I mean, usually I didn't even look at the meter. I just listened to the sound, and that's just how I hunted. But the Equinox and the Deus are kind of similar as far as that goes. They got they got the tone ID, which I like. Some people don't like it. It's just too distracting for them. And I know, like on the Equinox, I use the full tones, or the 50 tones usually, but a lot of people like 5 tones, and it's whatever you like. And
it's preference, whatever you can.
And sometimes with less tones, you can pick out stuff a little bit better, but it's just personal preference, I think.
Yeah, Craig, let your machine breathe. Let it be using more tones. You're kind of in the same aspect. I mean, you can put it on one tone and get the nuances out of that tone, I'm sure, or 2-tone, whatever. It's not so busy for some. I can't listen to a bunch of beeping, but I will, like with a Deus or with using multiple tones, only because I'm listening for high tweaks, and I know you do that. Bill Marsh says it on here too. With the Equinox, blocks out the electric fences with noise canceling. Some of them have a noise canceling button on them and stuff.
The noise canceling on the Equinox is awesome. It just really works great. I had this one yard, and there was like one side was a power line running across of it, and I just lift the machine up and point the coil right at the power line and turn on the noise cancel.
Right.
And it's amazing how you can't hunt hardly with it, without it, in that area. The other weird thing is, when I first moved into the house here, I'm right on Main Street, and there's all these power lines and the cable and everything, for internet stuff, and I was getting a lot of interference, like especially with the Bliss tool, and I guess after about a year, they came in and they redid all the took all the wires down, fixed all the poles, and put up new cables. And right after they finished, I was out there, and all of a sudden I was like, "Wow, I'm not getting hardly any noise." And right. I actually talked to a couple people, and they said that they got this new shielding on these power cables now.
Yeah.
When I looked up, they look different than the old ones even.
They do that. Well, they started doing that, Craig. I mean, they were having such a problem with EMI generally. You're affected by EMI, whether some people are affected more than others. Electromagnetic interference can really, it messes with me, but it can,
it's all over the place.
Yeah. It's bouncing.
You can't get away with it, from it. It's, it's like they got all these, like Xfinity has hotspots everywhere, where you can, tune into their internet, but it's
they call them,
up and down the street, most people have internet, and it probably overlaps,
Well, some of the people too with, I'm bringing in another topic here real quick, is like the paranormal stuff, these ghost hunters and stuff like that. They'll get into a place and they want to rule out things before they even, go too far. And the one thing that I not consistently see, but see a lot of times, they'll go through like into a basement and they got these DC, like these box things where you plug them into your wall. That's like a DC transformer kind of thing. You plug it in and then you have knob and tube wiring sometimes. And this stuff is throwing off so much EMI that it's almost like a fear cage. EMI can make you get headaches. It can make you ill. It can give you rashes. It can make you hallucinate. I mean, EMI really can mess with people. I'm very sensitive to it myself. I can tell you, I walk into a house, or I ran, like when I drove truck for a living, I had a cell phone booster in my, and this is way back a little bit, about 10 or 15 years ago, and I couldn't figure out, I could feel this pressure in my head. It was the strangest feeling, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I had just bought this booster for the cell phone, and, I kept on feeling it. I turned it off, and imagine that pressure, that feeling in my head went away right away. And, it's, I'm sensitive to EMI, the high doses of it. And metal detectors do throw that off, but they're always usually in a safe range. Now, I know the Excalibur is higher up on that scale than the Beach Hunter ID. I saw a video on that. Was very well done. But yeah, EMI can mess with a lot of stuff, including you. And not getting off that subject, Craig, because we don't only have about 10 more minutes, but Brandon mentioned on the chat here, he says all this advanced technology we have nowadays, the detectors should be able to tell us whether a target is a gold ring or a piece of tinfoil. I mean, they can tell us the soil makeup and what's in the ground I can't read the rest of it, but essentially they can tell us the ground, whether the ground's mineralized and stuff like that. And really the reason for gold and tinfoil, pull tabs and nickels are so close as far as conductors. The way they conduct it, like you have silver that's very high conductor, gold is very low. And because nickel and gold and tinfoil are so close, it really messes with detectors. I guess even the Bliss tool and the Equinox. I mean, you pick up this tin foil and it's a dig me signal. It wants you to dig it. And there's ways of doing an analysis as far as with some of these metal detectors and different modes they have to be able to tell you. But essentially, really, if it's non-ferrous, you got to dig it. But when you get into a pile of this tin foil, these little balls of tin foil, it can really mess with detectors just because of the conduction. We run into the same thing with zinc. Zinc lids, the old ones, Craig, they'll come through. They'll bang right through, no problem. Now with what we found, even with the Bliss tool, it surprised me. But like with the Bliss tool, it can do something I've never seen a lot of detectors do, is I can discriminate out just by moving a toggle switch for non-ferrous items, turn it into one, and I can run my coil right over a aluminum can all day long, beat the coil on it. It'll never make a peep, but yet it'll still go off with a dime, a quarter, and even sometimes copper, like pennies and stuff like that. It'll break through, but if it's breaking through, I want to dig it because it nulls out aluminum, but I'm losing nickels and gold. So obviously, if you're in a park or something, you're going to have a ton of aluminum, pull tabs, and this and that, but if you tune them out or discriminate them out, you're going to miss the gold. But I see what he's saying. Brandon is saying about, they could do all this stuff. Why can't they do that as far as, be able to tell? And it's just, Craig, it's just a real, it's a question we've had, but it's just real hard to do it.
I think down the road they'll get better at it as they get more faster processors in the chips and stuff in these machines.
Yeah.
I think that's, they may be able to figure it out that way, but I don't know. It's if somebody can actually ID gold, they got they can name their price on the machine pretty much. Well, just cherry pick for gold. Well,
I never thought I'd ever see a time where you can. I mean, most of the detectors out there, VLF wise, they're going to go off on a tin can. I mean, aluminum can, no problem. I mean, but you can. There's tricks you can do. Like if you're going over it, you lift your coil up, and you can lift your coil and swing it knee high, and you're still getting a pounding signal. It's more than likely a tin, aluminum can. But you got to think about it like this too. You got to get that aluminum can out of the way, so because there might be a coin right next to it, and you can't go through an aluminum can, or a piece of iron to get something directly underneath it. So
yeah, because it's a high conductor,
right? It's going to pound through. But I thought it was great. I mean, with the Bliss tool, I've never seen a VLF that can do that. And really, up until about 2 years ago, there wasn't very many that I ever heard of that can actually go through a mineralized rock or a hot rock and get a target underneath it. I mean, now the Equinox can do it. The Quest 40 can do it, or Pro, I mean, can do it. They couldn't even, most of the detectors couldn't even get a Civil War bullet on top of a big hot rock. It wouldn't even read it up to it. Now, I mean, with the ballistic, we can ground balance to it, the hot rock, and still get the Civil War bullet on top of it with the V3 model. But the V6, V5, and 6, you can go right through it and get the Civil War bullet underneath it. And I know the Quest Pro will do it, and I'm almost positive the Equinox will do it. And that's a big achievement, because for years people dug these mineralized rocks. It would drive you crazy. And once you got used to the way they sounded, because usually they had a weird kind of signal on them with some of the detectors, and you knew, okay, that's a hot rock. But you got to get it out of the way, because there might be something right underneath it, when you're talking about Civil War stuff.
Yeah, in my yard, the Deas would pick up these weird tones, and it was like a high tone, but it was like a hollow tone. It just sounded weird. And every time it'd be this hot rock, and I actually went back and I got a signal one time, and I thought it was probably one of those hot rocks. I went back in and got the Bliss tool and tried it on the signal, and I wasn't getting anything, not even a clip. So, some machines are, vulnerable to that, but it's like the, Deus has noise canceling, but, different frequencies, but I never got it, to work that great on, those frequencies under power lines.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all metal detectors, I mean, every one of them reacts differently to that kind of high tension wire stuff. Some of them the new ones work really good most of the time. Like we didn't have a problem with Bliss tool. I think the Equinox can do it. The Quest, I haven't had any problems with EMI underneath power lines.
Most of the time, you got to turn down the sensitivity a bit, and use the noise canceling, and just people want to get the maximum depth, but you just got to say, hey, you're not going to get it in those conditions.
Yep.
So you may get like a tone and may not read good on the meter, and you might want to dig those, because it may be affecting the meter too. Sometimes you can see the numbers jumping when you're underneath the power lines.
Yeah, and you're not moving it. You need motion to make the thing go, and all of a sudden it's bouncing all over the place. But Craig, we're about right up to 7:30 right now. We like to keep these shows about a half an hour. I wanted to tell everybody, if you're listening to an archive show later on, be sure to tune in on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Craig and I are going to be talking about some new stuff that we're trying to do and get started, and kind of involve our listeners a lot more into the show in the future, and being able to offer some good stuff to you, and try to. Well, I don't want to give up too much, Craig, but I'm going to tell you, tune in on Saturday night. We'll talk all about it, and I think it's pretty neat. And we're just trying new things, man. We're all about trying new stuff and making some changes for the betterment, and including everybody in the community of metal detecting and bottle hunting, prospecting, that kind of thing. So I see that Ohio Relic Hunter's on here, Bill Marsh, Brandon. I think I saw Gavin on here too, up here towards the top. Let me see here. Oh, no, Peter's on here too. It's welcome you guys to chat. We do have a chat page too. If you're not driving, don't chat and drive, but you can get on to the Spreaker page, or go to our I guess website, takes you right to it, and click the comment button. And that way, sometimes there's a whole different conversation going on chat right here. And these guys are really experienced too. So if you have a question and they use a particular kind of detector, they'll help you out on chat too if you don't want to call in. I try to monitor it, but it's hard for me to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I kind of get messed up if I do that, unless Craig's talking, then I can kind of glance at it. So you can get on to chat. But thanks for listening. Be sure to like and follow and tell a friend, because we do it pretty much word of mouth, I guess you could say. And we don't advertise a lot of places, so we only can do what we can do. So get out there, guys. I know Bill Marsh is going to be hunting this morning. Everybody wish him luck. I hope you find a bunch of gold coins, Bill. Don't get too hot and drink plenty of water.
Yeah, don't die of heat stroke. We're going to have 97 today.
Oh, I know. He's already at 90 degrees. It's going to be crazy. But, guys, get out there. Keep digging. God bless.